Hey YouTube, I want to do another video. This one will be on sashimi knives, or I think they call it yaginiba in Japanese. And I have three knives here. Um, Three are different steel qualities and definitely different prices and different lengths. Um, the very first one here is a Homamen. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. This one is actually very nice, and I got it for, I believe, a pretty good deal. It was only a little over $100, and it is consists of blue steel, not entirely, but it has its composition has partial blue steel in it. So that's a carbon steel, a very high grade carbon steel. I think it ranks in super, and there's a lower one. I believe this one consists of the second one, or the blue steel 2, versus the super blue steel. Used it one or two times. Great blade. When I first got it, I always do sharpen all my knives or hone it a little bit before I ever use it. So the knife actually came pretty sharp, but I like to refine it a little bit and make it to more of my likings. The handle is laminated or kind of glossed over, so it's waterproof. And this, I believe, is it's not plastic. It's actually like some kind of animal, or I can't recall exactly what the exact thing for this, the composition of this is, but it's not plastic. If you look closely, it's actually rather dull in comparison to this one, which is a little more glossy. So I'll get back to you on this as far as what this piece actually is that it's made of. I don't have it off the top of my head. And then, as you can see here, let's focus in a little bit. There's a little writing here. I can't read what it says, but it makes the knife look pretty cool. And it has two shades. It's raw steel, so it has like two shades of color here for the blade. And this blade is 10.6 inches. Rather long blade, but it's very good for cutting sashimi or fish, because you do one stroke, and because the blade is very sharp from end to end, one stroke would basically cut the fish all the way to separate it. And that was the whole intent and design of these long sashimi knives, is that you don't want to have to put too much movement of the knife to the fish. That way you don't tear the fish up. So that's very nice for this blade. It's so nice that sometimes I don't want to use it. I rather just use the other blades. And if we look at the back side here, it does look like it's like that's not really rust, it's just the color of the blade. This is, like I said, is raw steel, so compared to like a blade like this one, which is what most people are more used to seeing, very refined and cosmetically enhanced, this blade, not so much. This blade cosmetically is, I mean, I guess depending, beauty of anything is on the person that's looking at it. So I guess to some people this blade is very, very beautiful. But for most, it's rather a dull looking blade as far as cosmetically. The blade itself is definitely not dull. It holds its edge relatively well. I've cut for long periods of time with this blade, and you don't need to sharpen it very often. Though I like to sharpen all my knives after I use it every time, regardless if I even just cut one piece of fish. I sharpen all my knives. So I like to keep it like basically razor sharp. I use Japanese whetstones. Depending how dull it is, I might go with 1,000 grit and then move up to 6,000 grit as the final polishing. And then if it's not too bad, I'll go from 3,000 to 6,000, or any which way. In general, it could be 3 to 6, 1 3 6, or it might just be 1,000 3,000, and I'm good. So that's basically how I sometimes sharpen my knives. I'm no master knife sharpener by any means, so the method I'm using may sound bad to some people, while saying, why are you sharpening your knives like that? That's not how you're supposed to do it. But like I say, I'm not no master sharpener, but in the end I get the job done, and my knives are sharp enough to do the job that I need it to do, and sharper than some of the knives that come from the factory. So this knife, I got it as a gift. This is just a regular Japanese steel knives. All three of these knives, 1, 2, and 3, are all made in Japan. This Homamen knife was actually sent from Japan, and so it took me like 3 weeks or 4 weeks to get it. And they made it a very, I guess, special thing that I had to sign for it and everything. But the knife is definitely very nice. Surprisingly, I only paid $100 for it, or a little bit more than that. So I was initially questioning its quality. Why I would get a blade like this for $100 or a little bit more, versus some of the other blades. If you were to get a similar blue steel knife or even a white steel knife, you pay upwards of $200. So I don't know. I don't know how to comment on that. But overall, I would just say is I got a good deal for this knife. So let's go to this one again. This one is just a regular Japanese sashimi knife with just a regular stainless steel. It's not even carbon steel. It does have some nice designs on it, kind of like a Damascus look, but it's not Damascus. It's just made to look that way, cosmetically. But the blade itself is good. I've used this a few times too. I've used actually all these knives, and I just try them all out to see which one ranks the best in my books. This knife is single beveled, so as you can see here, this is beveled, but this part is flat. So sharpening is easier, as some people would say. I don't find double beveled knives that much harder to sharpen. It may be a little more work, but they're not that much harder to sharpen. I think sharpening is really about the angle of how you approach the blade, more so than too much of the bevel, whether it's single or double. I actually prefer double bevel edged knives, but this is a gift, so I'm not going to complain. I like it too, and it's different. So on to the third knife. This one is another stainless steel knife, and it's a Sakai knife, or Sakai, made in Sakai, Japan. Yoshihito, there you go, that's what it is. It's a Yoshihito knife. And this one is less of a Yanigiba, but more of a just like a regular slicer knife. I can't recall what the Japanese term is for this. As you can see, the blade difference, even with this and this, you can see the blade difference. This one is more rounded, and this one is kind of more triangular. And yeah, so if you look, if you look at that, so does it affect the cutting? Not really, not for me. I cut fish, or sashimi, or make sushi. These knives, as far as the blade, how it is, doesn't really affect too much of how I cut it. You either can or cannot cut the fish. If you cannot, then it's always a good thing to learn. So this one is supposedly like ice hardened steel. Let's see if we can see it here. Maybe I should turn it around. Made in Japan, of course. So what does it say here? It says premium ice hardened Daizu steel. So it's a higher end stainless, I assume. It's a higher end stainless, and I like it actually. Initially when I got it, it wasn't too sharp from the factory or from the manufacturer. Through some work, I had to buy some stones, some additional water stones, wet stones, and worked on it for a little bit and made it really sharp now. It's sharp enough to shave now, but of course I don't shave with it. So now it works very well. One thing about me, as far as sashimi knives or yanigibas, any kind of knife like this, or even just slicers, especially for the so-called more sashimi knives, I try to limit only cutting fish with it. I don't use it to cut lettuce or cucumbers, because I figure the more you use a knife for more things, the faster it gets dull. And I don't want this knife, where it has to slice such a delicate meat, to get dull too quickly, that if I pick it up again to use it, I might damage the fish that I'm trying to cut, and that wouldn't be nice if I tear the fish up or something. So I restrict it to mainly cutting fish, and I think that really helps in keeping the sharpness. Also, another thing I found very well too, that I learned from another professional knife sharpener, is after I sharpen it with the stones and polish it with the stones, I would strop it. I would strop these knives. I have a leather strop I use, and I would strop these knives, and it makes it a lot sharper, at least the way I feel when using it, and also just by feeling the blade, it makes the knife a lot sharper. So it's an option to consider if you want to try to make your knives more sharper, or at least these kind of knives more sharper. I strop it, and it comes out to a very nice razor edge. And when I do use it to cut fish, it glides through it very easily. There's no problems whatsoever with any of these knives. And as far as steel, a lot of people are like, well, if I buy a sushi knife, or a sashimi knife, what steel should I get? Well, I'm just going to tell you what I know, and what I know may not be the most correct, depending on what some experts might say, but I'll just go with what I know, and if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. So as far as picking a sushi knife or a sashimi knife, first of all, I think pick a reasonably nice one. You don't have to buy like a $400 knife or $1,000, but I think, in general, I don't think price is that big of a deal, but of course, what you pay for is what you get. So I say, anywhere from $50 and up is reasonable. And then from that point on, how nice your knife is, and how sharp it stays, and how good the quality becomes, surely, you know, some knives have better quality in composition and everything from the start, and then some are just not there. But um, those those things aside, and all things equal, ultimately is how you take care of your knife. I mean, it really is. All the sushi chefs that I've seen, they really value their knives. As soon as they use it, they wipe it. Now, if you get a stainless steel knife, like this or this, um, not wiping it for a period of time might not hurt it because it won't rust. With this one that's raw steel, not wiping it for one night and you might start to see problems, or even for a couple hours depending on the humidity, you might start to see problems if you leave it soaking in water or something. Um, Definitely never put any of these knives through a dishwasher. It's very discouraged. I never did, so I don't know what the damage is to it. I don't do it because I really cherish the knives I get. Um, they don't call this channel the Blade Brothers for nothing. There's a reason why we're called that, is that we very much like our blades and cherish our blades. So, to pick your sushi knife or your sashimi knife, mainly is one, just get a decent quality one. Don't spend a fortune unless that's what you want. And here's the thing, is like you can buy a $2,000 knife, but you might not want to use it. Then it's cool. I mean, it can be a good show-off knife, but so that's up to you. But if you want to buy a knife to use, then you know, just pick something reasonably nice and take very good care of it. You know, learn how to sharpen it with whetstones properly. Sharpening it the wrong way could damage, if not make the knife more dull. And then you might not like the knife, but it really has nothing to do with the knife. So that's something to be aware of. And sharpening any knife with a whetstone, if you're a first timer, it does take practice. So don't get discouraged if you know you're not getting it the first couple times, or your knife is not coming out the way you like it. It takes practice. The best way I see it is go out there, get some knives that you can work on with the whetstone and practice, because you have to hold it at the right angle. And if you kind of go off and on the angle, then your blade might not come out to be as refined as it should be. Or you have sections that are sharp and then you have sections that are not sharp. And then when you slide your knife through the fish, you run into resistance once you come to a certain part of your knife, and you don't want that. And that's with this knife or any knife. Now, of course, this knife is longer. It's 10 and a half inch. This one is only 8 inches. This one is only like 9 maybe. Let me see. Actually, yeah, maybe even less than that. I say about 8 inches. Yeah, both. So these are about 8 and a half inches. This is a 10 and a half inch knife. A little over 10.6 inches. So with this one, it takes more time to sharpen because you have a longer blade, and it's also more important that you get practice, because fatigue sometimes will change the angle of your sharpening and make it inconsistent. And then a long blade like this, sometimes it takes a lot of concentration and I guess you would say stamina to keep the angle at the right place, and then at the same time moving the knife to sharpen it. And also, offside tip, if anybody does buy a water stone to sharpen these knives, ideally you should soak the water stone for at least 10 hours before you use it. I keep mine soaking in water all the time. It never hurts it. I've been soaking it for months, and I don't see any problems with the stone or any parts that comes with the stone. I never see any problems. So if you have the opportunity to do so, leave your stones in the water. That way when you want to sharpen a knife, just pull it out, get to work. Always remember to occasionally spray some water on the stone. Keep it a little moist, and your stone should be fine, and your knife should work great, and your knife should come out great too, with that kind of a sharpening. offhand advice or suggestion. As far as buying stones, you want to get a more coarser grit stone and then move up. Like I have a 1.3 and a 6,000. You can go as coarse as a couple hundred. But for these knives, you probably don't need to. As dull as they don't get that dull unless you really neglect it. If even you say skip a day and sharpen it, you can still probably get away with a 3,000 and go to 3 to 6. If you really want to polish it, you can go up to 8,000. That's another option. I don't have an 8,000 grit stone. I figure 6 is good enough. And of course, consider stropping it, because it really makes it sharper, at least in my experience. So that's all I have to say about this review for these knives. In the future I'll get more of these knives and different ones, and I'll do another review. So thank you so much for watching, and always comment, let me know what you think. If you know something that I've said that might be not true or accurate, please let me know. I'm always open to that. Like I say, I'm not a expert in this stuff. I just like to share and do a review based on my experiences and somewhat of what I know. So thank you, and definitely if you liked the video, hit like, and I'll see you soon.